the nurse snaps. Then it is not the employer who is blamed for this problem. It is the nurse who has been stretched unmercifully. I have been that nurse. The nurse with a decades-long career of stellar reviews, publications, and national awards, who suddenly was incompetent and overly negative. The nurse who was falsely accused of stealing narcotics in the wake of patient and family complaints about her abrupt dismissal after 6 years in her role. I was forced to wake up and move to self-employment. I'm now the dementia nurse, a coaching practice that brings me great joy.
Woo! There you go.
One thing is certain about nurses. You can throw us to the wolves, but honey, we'll come back leading the pack. In closing, I remind you of the saying that feces rolls downhill. When staffing cuts are made in our nursing homes, who is at the bottom of the hill? It's not the nurse who cries at night because she's failed again to get it all done. It's not the poor CNA working like a mule for $10 an hour. At the bottom of the hill is the man or woman in the bed. It's Pat. We have betrayed the greatest generation in this country. We have abandoned them at their darkest hours to make sure profit margins are maintained. We have left them to wonder, why won't you stop and help me? And I don't know about you, but I am here today to echo Peter Finch's cry of awakening. I am mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore.
Yes! Let's give it up for Gail. Awesome. I also want to say I've been a nurse for 32 years, and when I started labor and delivery, I was working day shift. There was 14 nurses. I left in 91 when there were only 5 nurses on days, and I was the OB triage nurse with 8 patients in labor waiting to be admitted. It was pretty horrific back then. Anyway, our next nurse is Jeanette. Come on, Jeanette. Welcome, Jeanette.
Yeah, I'm good. Hello, my name is Jeanette Hand, and I'm an RN. What's your superpower? I'm 52 years old and have been a nurse for only 3 years. Nursing is my 3rd career. For the last 2 years, I have worked in a local nursing home, and I'm going to be honest. If you told me that was what I would be doing as a nurse when I went to nursing school, I would have said thank you, but no thanks. That having been said, I have come to love my job. My residents, they are like family to me. When I first started working in the nursing home, I was terrified of how many residents I would have to be caring for, which at this facility was a reasonable 20. I kept telling myself it would be okay as the acuity level is not as high as in a hospital. It took some months to feel comfortable, but eventually I was able to handle the patient load while taking the time to make each of my residents feel special and cared for. It was my mission to make my residents feel like they mattered. The truth is that reasonable 20 is not all that reasonable. I only have time to take vitals, give meds, provide treatments, and address issues the resident tells me about. I don't have time to assess each of my residents. Assessments that could possibly catch something prior to requiring a hospitalization. The facility I work at was sold and a new management company has taken over. At first, nothing changed, but now the changes have begun. The most noticeable, the cut in nursing staff. The unit I work on is a long-term care unit that has 59 residents when full, which is most of the time. And we had 3 nurses caring for those residents during the day and evening shifts with 5 to 6 GNAs. Overnight, we had 2 nurses and 3 GNAs. Now the new company is counting administrative staff that have a nursing license after their name as part of the patient-staff ratio, despite the fact that they're not providing direct care.
Wait a minute, does anybody not believe that? Because I believe it.
Because of this, on my unit, the day shift is currently staffed by 2 units. We were told we would have 7 GNAs. That hasn't happened yet. The evening shift has it just a little better. The overnight nurse comes in for the last half of the shift. And overnight, the shift is covered by 1 nurse and 4 GNAs for 59 residents. With up to 30 residents to care for, my job becomes all the more difficult to accomplish. And don't forget to punch out on time. When I go to work, I worry. How can I listen to and address my residents' concerns and take care of their most innate need to feel like they matter on an individual basis? I worry I will miss a change of condition that may be significant, but if caught early enough, a hospitalization could be avoided. I worry there will be an increase in patient falls due to the fact there isn't enough staff to keep each resident safe. I worry I will lose my compassion. I worry about my physical and mental health due to the increased stress of being forced to care for too many residents than is safe. This is why we must fight for safer patient-staff ratios in all settings. There is a fundamental problem in healthcare facilities. That is that the bottom line is the almighty dollar. And because the bottom line is the be-all and end-all, administrative staff are being included in patient-staff ratios. Patient-staff ratios cannot include administrative staff. The ratios must only include staff that is actively participating in the care of patients or residents. Today, we are here in support of Senate Bill 864 and House Bill 1602. Awesome, awesome bills. But they just address the staffing in hospitals. We also need to address staffing in nursing homes, and that's what I'm here to bring attention to today. Federal law and regulations on nurse staffing issues as contained in the Nursing Home Reform Act of 1987, how long ago was that? States that each facility is to care for each of its residents in a manner and in such an environment as will promote maintenance or enhancement of quality of life of each resident. It further states that a nursing facility must have sufficient nursing staff to provide nursing and related services to attain or maintain the highest practicable physical, mental, and psychosocial well-being of each resident in accordance with the written care plan. I contend that law is not specific enough. The Consumer Minimum Staffing Standard agrees with me, requiring at the very least on day shift, the ratio of direct caregivers in a nursing home be at least 1 to 5 residents. On my unit, when full, we have 59 residents. On Friday, April 15th, 2016, I had 57 residents staffed by 2 nurses and 5 GNAs. In addition, a unit manager was on staff. If you include the UM in the ratio, the staff was 7 residents to 1 direct caregiver. But you can't include the unit manager because she's not providing direct care. That means the ratio is 8.4 residents to 1 direct caregiver. The consumer minimum staffing standard further states that licensed nurses to patient ratio for day shift should be 1 to 15 residents for the evening shift 1 to 20. Well, I'm currently expected as an RN on day shift to have 30 patients. That's double the consumer minimum staffing standard. Let me tell you what that minimum consumer that's a standard that was developed by nursing professionals with long-term care expertise and adopted by the membership of the National Citizens Coalition for Nursing Home Reform. And I got this information from the consumervoice.org. I contend that staffing ratios for all healthcare facilities is not only a matter of importance for us nurses and for better patient outcomes, but I believe it is a matter of human dignity for all involved. If I worked with 15 residents in my facility, I would better be able to treat my residents with dignity and compassion. I would be able to fully assess and meet my patients' needs rather than just deal with their immediate issues. I would better be able to bring a ray of sunshine into their lives. As nurses, we all need to say enough is enough and fight for what is right. And that is why we are here today. Don't forget to contact your representatives.
That was Jeanette. Jeanette, you're amazing. I couldn't take care of that many patients. I know my limits. Next is a really famous nurse. Her name is Mary. I'll let her introduce herself. Thank you.
Okay. Hi, folks. I'm Mary Magdalene. I'm from Massachusetts. I'm also known as the New England nurse. So my career began 34 years ago, and I'm here to be a witness to the trajectory of nursing. I'm grateful to be here to present a piece I wrote last November, which was widely circulated and written in response to an article that James Ledbetter wrote in the New Yorker. The title was, "Why is the U.S. Perpetually Short on Nurses?" James Ledbetter touched on some interesting points in his article, but I felt compelled to point out a few more from the nursing perspective. Let's begin with an invitation. Are there any journalists here? Okay. Nurses across the U.S. would love to invite an adventurous journalist to look with deeper perspective into what's actually happening in the nursing arena. There's so much happening alongside the rewarding aspects of being in the nursing profession. I underscore that it would take a journalist who is adventurous because to cover the terrain of the actual full spectrum of truth within nursing will take some courage and stamina. As a journalist, you'll need somewhere in the vicinity of the fortitude required for a nurse to consistently run 8 to 12 hours on foot, often at the pace of, let's say, running for a bus. Combine this with having to mentally override your bodily functions. There is no pit stop. You aren't allowed to eat or use the restroom. Instead, add a steady diet of mind-numbing bombardment of stimuli from patients, family, machines, and phones calling out in constant need. Be sure to keep all those important life-saving facts on the top of your gray matter now to ensure positive patient outcomes. Next, you'll discover there are not enough resources in the way of adequate staffing by the very nature of the healthcare construct and adversarial pushback from managerial or administrative demands often exist. Lastly, you would have to be able to be the type of journalist who is able to tolerate having your days garnished with the fear factor and not the fun, entertaining kind. such as all the reasons why you need liability insurance, the pervasive hostile incivility and bullying from just about anyone in your environment, the loss of trust with those who vowed to do no harm but found themselves abandoning that idea with the push for profits, physical and emotional violence from patients who strike out, whether intentionally or because of a dementia-ridden mind. Keep on top of your brain now that you'll always have to be Johnny on the spot while being in judgment from peers, regulatory agencies, and compliance police. Now let's just say you're pretty savvy, a seasoned journalist who has ventured into some war-torn areas to cover a story. You are a person who is experienced with life and death up close and are acutely aware of mortality all around you. With your experience, you're likely ready to look at some environments in which nurses are trying to execute its once sacred profession. Allow me to demystify a few points for the sake of getting the conversation started. I say a few points because there is an overload of backbreaking, a motherload of scenarios that still have not been brought to light for resolution. For every nurse, there are stories, enough to fill volumes, more than the size of a few hardcover physician desk references. Presently, there is a general consensus that conveys that nurses love nursing for what it once was, how it was taught to them and mentored to them, and what it could be, but not for what it has become. So in order to prevent the piano from, for me to prevent the piano that I'm about to toss out the window from landing on your head, let's start with only a few points just as fair warning. There is no nursing shortage. There hasn't been for a very long time. Just about the mid-1980s, someone said somewhere that there is an impending nursing shortage. So why, oh why, would that not be true? You read about it in magazines, saw it on the news, all those trajectory graphs. It's been a song that never ends. Suffice to say, the colleges and universities clearly got that song stuck in their heads and started recruiting from high school shindigs to hospital awareness meetings and chats. Students now have come wielding their tuition and a new sense of purpose and meaning. How can their bright rose-colored futures go wrong? They have been told they'll have a recession-proof job with huge financial rewards in environments full of humanity. So in exchange for blood, sweat, and tears, empty bank accounts, and firstborn, they launch into their career of crickets. The reality is, new graduates suffer huge disappointments and confusion by having to explain to everyone from hill to dale why there is difficulty in getting a job in nursing. This adds to the confusion of the people to whom they are explaining. After all, there is a nursing shortage, right? The New Hampshire and Massachusetts boards of nursing concur. There is no nursing shortage. The current trend now is that a new nurse will have to earn stripes in a proving ground environment such as long-term care, skilled nursing facilities for about a year before being considered for a position in an acute care setting. Outside of those who are able to land a position in long-term care, there are many other nurses scrambling for something, anything. Do you know anybody? Ask any hospital human resource department how many applications from nurses they get daily. Luckily, only 50% of nurses work in hospitals, so there is still hope yet. So where are the big bucks that all nurses have been told out there that's waiting for them? The pay rates have lowered or have frozen over the past 20 years. With a nursing lot comes lower wages. There is always someone willing to do it for less. So goodbye to nurses of longevity with invaluable skill sets and higher pay rates, and hello to new grads who are compelled to take lower paying jobs in order to work in a profession they so rigorously trained for. So who is happy here? Happy are those corporate entities that get to keep more of a very long list of things that don't include compensating nurses adequately. I think that one nurse reported recently, I think that dealing with secretions alone warrants significantly more than $24 an hour. That is what one nurse reported as earning in Ohio, OH, in an intensive care unit. To put this in perspective, I was earning $3 more an hour than this as a lower degree nurse in 1997. There is an abundance of nurses, but they are unwilling to work in unsafe patient care settings. Many things constitute an unsafe environment for both the nurse and the patient. It all starts with basics of available hands-on to perform safe, competent care. Lack of staffing is not due to the lack of nurses in the United States.
That's right.
It has to do with keeping costs down for the corporations. There are unsafe nurse-patient ratios everywhere, not just the hospital setting. I have given up working in long-term care skilled nursing facilities where nurses are expected to pass meds, execute wound treatments, breathing treatments, maintain oxygen, prevent falls and other emergencies, and much more for the average of 35 patients on the day shift. Once the night shift hits, you're saddled with anywhere from 40 to 60 patients. But what about the certified nurse aides that help you say? They're great if you can find any. The last place I worked gave me a unit of 40 patients and a singular CNA who just could not cope anymore. Where is the safety and humanity in that? Nurses love people. Caring for you is a calling. We really want to take care of you the way we would want to be cared for. But the corporate structures only understand numbers and profits. They will talk a good game about the rest. All the suits will be on the heels of the uniforms to this end. The real end result is that it prevents most nurses from providing care in the manner that feels good and rewarding. This is simply, humanely impossible to cover all the demands. Nurses feel bad when they have to shave everything off but the highest priorities. Work off the clock. Take that mandatory half-hour break that you say you have to take because it's the law. And your employer knowingly docks you for that time. The last place I worked had financial incentive for administration to keep costs down. How they decided to do this was to play with the schedule. The schedule would go up for all to see that all the shifts were covered, so-and-so regular staff, so-and-so agency staff. It's not before long that you realize these agency staff do not exist. So when Jane Doe from the agency does not show up for work, the regular staff has to work short-handed once again, and the corporation keeps those funds. The financial incentives for administration are what keeps this and other creative behaviors continuing. Meanwhile, a lot of smoke and mirrors are held up to the public eye. There are a slew of ways in which nurses are finding themselves in conflict with ethics and integrity. An employer does not value its nurses if they allow bullying to thrive. It has become a rule rather than an exception to experience bad behavior from other healthcare staff at all levels. It is a complex issue, and trusted to keep an even keel are often willing participants. I know it's hard to believe, but some facts and realities, although painful, need to be looked at before it can heal. It's now estimated that 1 in 3 nurses are leaving because of bullying. Melissa Brown, our famous Melissa Brown, founder and facilitator of Gorilla Nurse on Facebook, was put on probation by her hospital employer 2 weeks after pressing assault and battery charges against a patient who battered her. Less than 3 months later, she was fired. The ANA has come out with a statement recognizing this as a real problem and that it needs serious attention. Yes, something has gone horribly awry in our heart-centered caring profession. For anyone experiencing this, consider contacting the go-to guru, Renee Thompson. She is an expert on this topic from top to bottom and will guide you with her light. My observations and experience over the past 30 years, as well as experience compiled from other nurses who are still in the trenches, on the ledge, or have run from the profession like their head was on fire, tells me it is time. It's time to look deeper at where the system has broken, without debate, but with a focus on solutions and healing. Nurses were made for this. Accurate journalism will help. Look at all the amazing nurses here today working to facilitate the healing of the wounds within the profession. Please support any and all efforts to this end. Join initiatives that give support and groups premised on the golden rule. Share what brings the best out as we navigate the broken systems. Keep with your heart-centered goals in nursing. No matter what profession you have committed to, please remember to bring compassion, integrity, and caring in all that you do. Thank you.
Yeah, I wish I could whistle, but I can't. Woohoo, Mary. I'm here right now to speak about a nurse. Her name is Jenny. She couldn't be here today, but she asked me to speak about her story. The reason I'm standing up and fighting for safe staffing in support of Senate Bill 864 and House of Representative Bill 1602 is not the reason most would think. Yes, I am a nurse, and yes, I help educate new nurses. Yes, I'm passionate about nursing and the sisterhood of taking care of each other. And yes, I deeply care for my patients. Beyond all that is something much deeper. The day my life could have been taken from me. You see, before I was a nurse, I was a patient due to a condition I was born with. By the age of 30, I had experienced 30 plus surgeries and procedures, the first being when I was just a few weeks old. I have experienced firsthand what it is like to be the patient of an amazing nurse who is trying her best to keep up with the demands of her patient load. I have also been the roommate of a person who died in the hospital bed next to me. I have sat in a hospital bathroom and waited over an hour to get help. Worse, I have passed out in a hospital bathroom only to find out who knows how long later I was found on the floor. One hospitalization in particular stands out the most, and it was also my longest. I had gone in for a same-day procedure and ended up spending a few weeks in the hospital. Yep, I woke up and it was a week or so later. Nosocomial staph infection, pneumonia, given medication that I was allergic to twice, and ultimately an emergency tracheostomy in the middle of the night, and also a bed sore on the back of my head. This is also when the stated above bathroom incident occurred. By this time in my life, I was a nurse, a newer nurse, but long enough to have a whole new perspective of what was going on around me. I panicked when I woke up and saw vancomycin hanging, my family from out of state at my bedside, and my pastor saying a prayer. This couldn't be good. For a moment, I thought I was at my funeral. It took a few weeks, but I slowly got better. When it was finally time to go home, let's just say the education I received, well, was not much at all. I had a trach, facial paralysis, and I was going to have to hook myself up to breathing assistance at night once I was home, and also a bed sore on my head to care for. It was the respiratory therapist and the nurse who stayed after their shift when they were already clocked out, using their own time, that finally gave me the reassurance and the education I needed to go home. This particular hospitalization is what I refer to as the time I almost died. Everything that happened to me, from the hospital-acquired infection, complications, and bed sore, to late pain medications, spending an hour in the bathroom waiting for help due to the lack of education, was all preventable. I have some PTSD from this particular event. Since then, when I've had procedures, I have a physiological response secondary now to anxiety. Nothing like a heart rate of 180 and a BP of 170/90 to get some attention. It has been 14 years since this incident, and I can remember it like it was yesterday. One thing I know is that the nurses, doctors, and the therapists that I worked with were all amazing at their jobs. They were the best of the best. But even the best of the best cannot provide the best care when they are asked to do more than what is safe. I am a nurse. I know what a good nurse looks and acts like. When you have to choose between educating a patient, going home, or coding the one dying, you have to prioritize. Not having staffing regulations for nurses is the reason I almost died. It had nothing to do with the abilities of those taking care of me. I saw it, I heard it, and noticed it myself. This is the reason I am fighting for safe staffing, the same way I fought for my life. I am not in this for politics. This is not about business. This is not about whose turf we're on. This is about one thing and one thing only: the safety of the public. I am lucky and thank God every day for living through that hospitalization. I believe I lived through that because God wasn't done with me yet. I have work to do. So let's do it. Safe staffing saves lives. Let's go save some lives. Support 864 and House Representative 1602. Support Nurses Take DC. Yeah. I forgot. One more speaker. John, please come up to the podium. Here he is. I see him. Actually, we have another speaker after John. Here's John. Give him a hand.
That's going to be a tough act to follow. I'm John Robertson. I came here from Seattle, Washington. Sorry the weather followed me. I've come here today not to tell my story, but the story of Kimberly Hyatt, who was briefly mentioned. This story is a matter of public record, and it was covered in both the local and national news media, as well as the outstanding book, The Nurses, by New York Times bestselling author Alexander Robbins. If you have not read the book, The Nurses, it is a must read for every nurse. I should also disclose that I did not know Kimberly, nor have I ever worked in the hospital where she worked. Like most nurses in Seattle, though, I have followed her story very closely. Kimberly was a 50-year-old ICU nurse at Seattle Children's Hospital, where she had worked for 27 years. While receiving outstanding appraisals from her supervisors throughout her career, on September the 19th, 2010, while caring for an 18-month-old infant with congenital heart disease, Kimberly made her first medication error. She accidentally gave 1.5 grams of calcium chloride instead of a dose of 140 milligrams. She immediately notified the appropriate individuals of her mistake and logged her error into the electronic reporting system, telling her supervisor, quote, "I messed up. I've been giving KCl for years. I was talking to someone while drawing it up, miscalculated in my head the correct mLs according to the milligrams per milliliter. First error in 25 years of working here. I am sick about it. I will be more careful in the future." Later that day, Kimberly was marched out of the hospital and placed on suspension. The following week, her employment was terminated with the hospital and she was reported to the Washington State Board of Nurses. Unfortunately, the infant that was in Kimberly's care died 5 days later. The ensuing investigation determined that it was not clear whether